JinPingMei Original Version Chapter 69. Mrs. Lin was transferred to the Jiaoshuan mansion for the first time, and Li Chunyuan scared away Wang Sangwan. It is said that Dan and Wen's sister-in-law arrived home and Ping'an said, "Dad is in the house opposite. Go in and report." Simon King was sitting with Wen Shukai in the study. When he saw Dan, he immediately came out and sat down in the small guest area. Diane said, "Sister-in-law Wen called me and is waiting outside." Simon King immediately ordered, "Ask him to come in." Na Wen's wife quietly opened the warm curtain, went inside, and kowtowed to Simon King. Simon King said, "Sister-in-law Wen, I haven't seen you for a long time." Sister-in-law Wen said, "My little wife has it." Simon King asked, "Where have you moved now?" Sister-in-law Wen said, "Unfortunately, my daughter-in-law abandoned her old house because of a lawsuit, and now she lives in Wangjie Lane, Dananshu." Simon King ordered, "Get up and speak." Mrs. Na Wen stood beside her. Simon King ordered everyone to go out. Ping'an and Hua Tong were hiding outside the corner door to wait on them. Only Diana's shadow was listening outside the curtain. Simon King Yin asked, "Which adults' houses do you often hang out in?" Sister-in-law Wen said, "It's the royal family's house on the street. Mr. Zhou's house and the garrison house. The royal family of Qiao, Zhong'er's father, and Xia's father's house." "Right?" Simon King said. "Do you recognize Wang Zhaoxuan's house, but not the family?" Sister-in-law Wen said, "My daughter-in-law is a regular customer. My wife and Sanyang often take care of my huakui." Simon King said, "Since you are familiar with each other, I have something to ask you, so don't stop me." He took out 5 taels of silver from his sleeve and gave it to him, and said quietly to him, "In this case, why did you find a way to hang his wife at your place? I will pay him a visit, and I will thank you." After hearing this, Mrs. Wen laughed and said, "Who told me to come? How did you know that you were here?" Simon King said, "As the saying goes, a person's name is like the shadow of a tree. How could I not know?" Sister-in-law Wen said, "If you talk about my wife, she is born in the year of the pig this year and is 35 years old. She is a high-class woman. She is as smart as a 30-year-old woman. Although he is doing this business, it is hard not to do it. Careful. Just go there. Many companions should follow, come and go. The third father is a man outside. How can he settle down in other people's homes? The rumors about this man are false. But his family is deep in the compound, and for a while, the 3 fathers my father is not here. So I can hide him somewhere so that no one can notice me. So that's okay. If my daughter-in-law lives in a narrow house, how dare she cause this problem? Even if my father rewards me with money, my daughter-in-law will not dare to take it. I would rather accept it. If you don't want to talk to me, just tell your wife." Simon King said, "If you don't accept it, it's just a dodge, and I'll be annoyed. If it works out, I'll reward you with some more silk and satin to wear." Sister-in-law Wen said, "What's wrong with you, old man? The master looked down upon you, which means you're lucky." He kowtowed, took the money, and said, "When my daughter-in-law quietly tells my wife, I will come back to your old man's house." Simon King said, "You do your job. I'll wait here. When you come, just come here. I won't use the servants." Sister-in-law Wen said, "I know. Not tomorrow, only the day after tomorrow, morning or evening. I'll come after asking for instructions." "Come out one side," Dan said. Sister-in-law Wen, "It's up to you. I only want you to have 1 tael of silver. And that's what I ask you to do. Don't eat alone." Sister-in-law Wen said, "The hosen is plundering the sifting pan across the wall, but it's still closed with its back up." So he went out and got on the donkey, with his son in the cage, and kept going. Simon King and Wen Shukai sat together for a long time. When Jia Tixing came, he crowned himself and went to have a drink with Luo Tongji in the mansion named Luo Wangxiang. He didn't come home until he turned on the lamp. Let's say that sister-in-law Wen was overjoyed when she got home with Simon King's 5 taels of silver and sent the tea party away. In the afternoon, I walked to Wang Zhaoxuan's mansion, met Mrs. Lin, and said my best wishes. Mrs. Lin asked, "Why don't you come and see me in the past 2 days?" Sister-in-law Wen told Mrs. Lin about the time when she would have tea at home and burn incense on the roof in time for the 12th lunar month. Mrs. Lin said, "Your son is going, but you don't want to go." Wen's sister-in-law said, "How can I go? I just asked Wen Hendang to bring incense on my behalf." Mrs. Lin said, "I'll give you some money when I'm about to leave." Sister-in-law Wen said, "Thank you, madam, for your charity." After saying that, Mrs. Lin asked him to come near the fire to warm himself, and the maid brought tea to eat. While Mrs. Wen was having tea, she asked, "Third father is not at home." Mrs. Lin said, "He didn't go home for 2 more nights and only rested inside. He stayed with this group of people every day, only sleeping with flowers. Lying in the willow, I left my daughter-in-law, who is like a flower branch, in the room and ignored her. What should I do?" Sister-in-law Wen asked again, "Why is Sanyang missing?" Mrs. Lin said, "He is still in the room and has not come out." When Mrs. Wen saw that there was no one around, she said, "It doesn't matter, madam, don't worry. The little daughter-in-law has a connection." So Guan broke up the group. The third father was relieved and didn't go into the hospital anymore. Madam tolerated the little daughter-in-law. "I dare to say it. I don't dare to say it if it's not allowed." Mrs. Lin said, "What are you saying? I won't follow you in that situation. It's okay if you just say what you have to say." Sister-in-law Wen said, "The elder Simon in front of the county gate is now in charge of thousands of households in the Tixing Yuan. His family has paid off official debts and opened 4 or 5 shops. A satin shop, a herbal medicine shop, a silk shop, and a wool shop. Outside the rivers and lakes, there are also standard ships. Yangzhou is selling salt. Dongping Mansion sells fragrant wax. And there are about dozens of clerks and supervisors. Taishikai in Tokyo is his godfather, Taiweizhu is his guardian, Butler Zai is his in-laws. And the governor he is friends with all the inspectors and magistrates, not to mention the prefects and counties. The fields in his home are artless, and the rice is rotting into warehouses. Besides the eldest lady, she is the daughter of Wu Qianhu, the left guard of King He, who filled the house and became his stepmother. There are also 5 or 6 people who are head of the house and wear robes. The following singers, dancers, and concubines are favored by dozens of people. They serve cold food in the morning and lantern festival every night. My father is not 31 or 12 years old now, and it was exactly what he was back then. He is a man, with a big build, and looks like a character. He also used medicine to raise turtles, and he is used to flirting with people. He knows everything about backgammon, and he knows everything about playing kuju instead of for foot and playing maoqiu. I don't know. There are hundreds of schools of thought, and they can understand it when they see it. Duan can knock jade and gold, and 100 people pity Bailey. I heard that our family is a family with hairpins for generations, and the foundation is not shallow. I also saw that my third father was a student of martial arts. I also want to come to meet you, but I have never met her before, so it's hard to come. Yesterday, I heard that my wife is having a birthday nearby, and she is attracting talents from all over the world. So I also wanted to come and pay my respects to my wife on her birthday. The young daughter-in-law then said, "It's our first meeting. Why do you invite me so suddenly?" When the little boy reaches the old lady, he asks for permission to come and invite his father to meet him. Now the old lady has not only gotten to know him and interacted with him, but also asked him to cut off these people and not to disgrace our family. Mrs. Lin was fascinated and confused by Mrs. Wen's words, and her love was already awakening. Then he asked Wen's sister-in-law, "How can we suddenly meet each other if we don't know each other well?" Sister-in-law Wen said, "It doesn't matter. Wait until I tell Dad." All he said was that his wife asked him to go to the criminal court to file a complaint against him for seducing his third father. She asked him to come and have a private meeting in advance. What's wrong with this plan? Mrs. Lin was very happy when she said this, and she agreed to wait for her the next day. Mrs. Wen asked the woman for permission to return home, and at dinner time the next day, she came to Simon King's house. Simon King was sitting in the academy opposite, and suddenly Diane he reported, "Sister-in-law Wen is here." Upon hearing this, Simon King came out of the small guest seats and ordered the left and right to lower the curtains. After a long time, sister-in-law Wen came inside, kowtowed, and Diane knew the situation and walked out. Mrs. Wen then told Mrs. Lin what she wanted to say. She praised my father for his character and family, how he got to know the officials, how he was generous with his wealth, and how he was romantic. He was absolutely convinced. He agreed that tomorrow night, the third father would not be at home. We set up a banquet at home and waited. We met in secret on the pretext of favor. Simon King was filled with joy after hearing this. He also ordered Diane to reward him with 2 bolts of silk. Sister-in-law Wen said, "Dad is leaving tomorrow, so it's already early. When the lights are turned on and the street is quiet, I go to the food alley where his back door is. There is a house next to his back door, Dwayne's mother, and I'm waiting at his house." Dad only asked the high official to open the door, and I came out to lure him into Hong Kong without letting anyone nearby know. Simon King said, "I know, you go first tomorrow and don't leave even an inch away. I will be there as scheduled." After saying that, Mrs. Wen said her goodbyes and went out, then went back to talk to Lin. On the day of Simon's celebration, I went back to Li Zhao's room to rest for the whole night. I can't wait for the next day to cultivate my spirit. At noon, wearing a white Zhongjing scarf, I rode with Earl Ying to Zishi's family for a birthday drink. There were 2 singers at the table. Simon King had a few glasses of wine, asked the host to come over, and then skipped the table and walked out. He mounted his horse and was followed by 2 young men, Diane and Kintong. It was about the 19th. The moonlight was hazy, and the eyes were wiping across the street, and passed directly to the back door of Wang Zhaoxuan's mansion in Bianchi Lane. It was only then that the lights were turned on, after the crowds on the street became quiet for the first time. Simon King was half a house away from his back door, reined in his horse, and ordered Diane to go to his mother's house first. It turned out that this mother lived in the back room of Wang Zhaoxuan's house, and was recommended by Mrs. Wen. She guarded the back door morning and night, opening and closing doors. But he entered Hong Kong and settled in his home. Mrs. Wen heard the door slam in his room and opened it quickly. Seeing Simon King coming, Simon King, who was waiting at the back door, got off his horse, took off his gauze, brought him in, told the piano boy to take the horse, and went to the opposite door to wait under the eaves of the west side of the house. Diane went to Dwayne's mother's house. "Stay here," as Mrs. Wen invited Simon King in. She closed the back door, bolted it, and entered through the double passage. After turning round the first floor of the group room, there are 5 main rooms where the wife lives. The door next to it is closed. Mrs. Wen knocked lightly on the door knocker, and it turned out that something clicked. After a while, a maid came out and opened her doors. Sister-in-law Wen guided Simon King to the back hall, opened the curtain, and saw bright lights inside. On the front was a picture of his grandfather, Wang Jingchong, Prince of Banyang County. Taiyuan Jidu, wearing bright red sleeves, a python robe and a jade belt, sitting on a tiger skin chair and reading the Book of War. There is a statue of King Guan, but his beard is shorter. On the vermilion plaque at the entrance, there are 3 words J.E. Hall written on it, and a couplet written in official script on the 2 walls: "Inherit family integrity with pines and bamboos. Serve the country with meritorious deeds and fight for mountains." While Simon King was watching, he heard the bell ringing on the door curtain. Aunt Wen took out a cup of tea and drank it with Simon King. Simon King said, "Please come out to see the old lady." Sister-in-law Wen said, "Please let me have some tea with you. I just told my wife about it." Unexpectedly, Mrs. Lin secretly looked out from the door curtain of the room. She saw Simon King, with a majestic figure and a handsome figure. He wore a white satin Zhongjing crown on his head, mink worm ears, a purple cashmere crane cloak, and foundation soap boots. He was rich. Many deceitful and evil people, oppressing the good, deceiving the good, drunkards and lustful people. Mrs. Lin was filled with joy when she saw him, so she quietly called Mrs. Wen over and asked him whose mourning hat he was wearing. Sister-in-law Wen said, "This is the filial piety of his 6th wife, who has been gone for a while in the past 9 months. Rao Shasha, there is still a slap in the house now. He is an old man, can't you see? A quail out of a cage. Has also a Kato guy." After hearing this, the old lady became even more happy. Mrs. Wen urged him to go out, but the woman said, How can I go out if I'm so shy? Please ask him to come in. Sister-in-law Wen walked out and said to Simon King, Madam, please come to see me in my room. So he hurriedly opened the door curtain, and Simon King entered the room. He saw the curtain JinPingMei hanging red, the felt Maoyu covering the floor, the fragrance of musk orchid, and the air as warm as spring. On the embroidered couch, the tents are covered with clouds, and on the brocade screen, the moon reflects the Zhuanyuan sky. The woman wears a crown of gold silk and green leaves on her head, a wide silk coat of white damask, a crane cloak of agar-wood-colored satin with gold ornaments all over the ground, a wide brocade skirt of the great red palace, and storic white damask high-soled shoes. She is just a lustful young lady in the Qi Pavilion, a bodhisattva who gives Mao Bai in her boudoir. There are poems to prove it. The clouds are thick and greasy with long black marks, and the lotus steps move lightly with the fragrance of blue and musk. After being drunk and deeply in love, I returned to the embroidered tent and realized that my wife was unusual. When Simon King saw him, he bowed and saluted, and said, Madam, please turn up, and I will pay my respects to the students. Lin said, My lord, please excuse me. Simon King refused, so he knelt down and bowed twice. The woman also reciprocated the courtesy. After paying homage, Simon King sat down on the chair in front of him, and Mrs. Lin was combing her back and leaning against the bed to accompany her. Mrs. Wen had already closed the front door, and there was no servant behind. The corner door on the third young master's side is also closed. A little maid named Furong brought tea. Mrs. Lin had tea with Simon King. Aunt Wen stood by and said, My wife has heard that my father is in charge of the punishment. How dare my little daughter-in-law invite my father to come and ask for trouble? I don't know whether Dad will comply or not. Simon King said, I wonder what the old lady has to say. Lin said, To be honest with you, although the Han family has been doing this for generations, unfortunately the husband passed away a long time ago and the family has little savings. The child is young and gifted. He was raised and never took the exam, but now he has entered martial arts and dropped out of school at a young age. There are a few treacherous and bad people outside who lure him to drink wine outside and lose all his family affairs. Several times, he wants to file a complaint with the public. I am sincerely afraid that it will be a disgrace to my late husband's reputation if he appears in public. Today, I dare to invite you to Han's house to express your true feelings. Just like handing over a petition, I hope that you will show mercy and disconnect this person's origin, so that the child can change his ways. Specializing in fame, to carry forward the legacy, and to truly show the kindness of Sir, I am deeply grateful, and I should express my gratitude. Simon King said, Why did the old lady say such a thing? The honorable family has been wearing hairpins for generations, and has served as generals and ministers. My son has entered martial arts, and he is working hard to gain fame and inherit his ancestral martial arts. Unexpectedly, he listened to the coaxing of traveling and eating, and lingered over wine and wine. It is really what the young man did. My wife has ordered the students to go to the Yamen and punish these people immediately, so that we can prevent the future. After hearing this, the woman quickly stood up, wished Simon King a blessing, and said, I'd like to express my gratitude to you, sir. Simon King said, Why do you and I say this? As they spoke, they looked at each other with affection. After a while, Mrs. Wen put the wine on the table, and Simon King deliberately said goodbye. This student has just come to visit me, but he has never brought any gifts. How can he inherit the old lady's kindness and stay here? Mrs. Lin said, I don't know where you are, sir. No preparations have been made. We only have a glass of water and wine to chat on a cold day. Showing that we are ready, the maid sifted the wine, brought the gold pot to pour the fine wine, and the jade cup to store the delicacies. Mrs. Lin stood up and brought wine to her. Simon King also got down from the table and said, I'll give the old lady a drink first. Sister-in-law Wen interrupted and said, Dad, there is no need to give my wife wine. This November 15th is my wife's birthday, so just give her gifts on that day to celebrate her birthday. Simon King said, you said it earlier. Today is the 9th day of the Lunar New Year. 6 days to go. I will definitely come to the hall with my wife to pay my birthday. Mrs. Lin laughed and said, How dare you bother me? In a moment, there were 16 bowls of delicacies and large plates and large bowls. The red candles were burning high on the side, and the golden furnace below was adding fire. Wine is lustful. Look at the moment when the lotus drain has sunk after drinking and the moon is reflected in the window. A pair of bamboo leaves penetrate the heart, and the love between the two is already moved. Sister-in-law Wen had already passed by, but she didn't come after calling for wine. Seeing that there was no one around him, Simon King gradually sat down on the table and made some evil remarks. He pinched his wrists and rubbed his shoulders. At the beginning, the woman was hugging her pink neck, but the woman smiled and said nothing. Later, she opened her red lips, and Simon King stuck out his tongue, making a smacking sound, and laughing closely. The woman then closed the door to her room, took off her robe, slightly opened the brocade tent, lightly spread out her embroidered quilt, put a mandarin duck pillow across the bed. A phoenix-scented quilt. Their jade bodies were next to each other, and their breasts were hugged. It turned out that Simon King knew that the woman was a womanizer, so she brought a vagina with her at home and took some humong medicine. The woman touched his penis and saw that his penis was very big. Simon King also touched his female genitals. They were delighted with each other, and their love was as bright as fire. When you stretch out your ape arms, you won't feel the butterflies and bees flying wildly. When you lift your jade legs, you will be so shy that you shy away from the rain. Exactly, Songing is used to making romantic arrangements, and the jade hairpin falls on the head of the bed. Simon King then tried his best to win over the woman. Only when the weather gets deeper can the semen be released. The woman's hair is disordered. Her hair is in disarray, and her flowers are withered and her willows are sleepy. They put their heads together and hugged each other, then got up and dressed. The woman put on a silver lamp, opened the door, looked in the mirror for plastic surgery, and called the maid to hold some water to cleanse her hands, drink the fragrant mash again, and drink it again. After 3 glasses of wine, Simon King said goodbye and stood up. The woman kept trying to persuade him to stay and gave him frequent warnings. Simon King bowed down to accept the promise, thanked him endlessly, and went out to say goodbye. The woman was sent to the corner gate and returned. Sister-in-law Wen opened a back door first and called Diane and Kin Tong to bring their horses over and ride them home. The streets were already buzzing with trumpets and ringing bells, and it was quiet late at night. However, one day it was frosty and everything was silent. Simon King went home and spent the whole night speechless. On the next day, Simon King went to the Yamen and had finished distributing the money. He called for arrests at the district level in the back hall and gave these instructions. Wang Zhaoshuan, the 3rd young master in the mansion. Look for anyone to seduce him and see who is walking in the courtyard. Just find out the name and report it to me, because Xiang Jia Tixing said, the 3rd son Wang is not a good learner. Yesterday, his mother came to me again and again to tell me that it was none of his son's business. He was only seduced by this bachelor. If he is not punished now, he will be seduced in the future. It ruins other people's children. Jia Tixing said, the officer's opinion is good. He must be punished. Simon Kingjin was arrested at the provincial level. On the same day, he found out everyone's names and reported the matter. At noon, he came to Simon King's house to submit the notice. Simon King saw that there were Sun Zizui, Zhu Xinian, Xiao Zhangshan, Nai Yuer, Xiang San, Yu Quan, Bai Huixi, and the wives were Li Guiji and Qin Yuzhir. Simon King took the pen, erased the names of Sister Li Gui, Qin Yuzhir, Lao Sun, and Zhu Shi, and ordered, this little Zhang will wait for 5 bachelors, then take it with me and bring it to the Yamen tomorrow morning. All the people promised to go on. In the evening, I found out that Wang Sangwan and everyone were having a drink and playing games at Sister Li Gui's house, and they all lurked at the door of the room. At the end of the night, as soon as they came out, the officials took Xiao Zhangxian, Nai Yu, Yu Quan, Bai Huixi, and 3 or 5 others. Sun Zizui and Zhu Xinian went to the back room of Sister Li Gui, while Wang Sangwan hid under Sister Li Gui's bed and did not dare to come out. Sister Gui's family was so frightened that they didn't know where they were from. So people from the central government asked for the truth. Wang Sangwan hid all night and did not dare to come out. The Li family's buster was afraid that Tokyo would come down to fetch someone, so at the fifth watch, he persuaded Li Ming to change his clothes and send Wang Sangwan home. The provincial level rests took Xiao Zhang and others and hung him in the hearing room all night. In the morning of the next day, Simon King entered the Yamen and Jiati's punishment promotion hall. The punishment sticks were lined up on both sides, and he led people up. Each person held 20 big sticks and beat them until their skin and flesh were torn. Blood burst out, the sound shook the sky, and they wailed on the ground. Simon King told him, "I made you a bachelor. You only want to seduce other people's children to hang out in the courtyard. You don't abide by your duties. You should be punished seriously. I will punish you lightly now. If you do it again, you will be in my hands. The shackles must be displayed at the front gate of the courtyard." He shouted to the people around him, "Fork down." Everyone looked out. Gold and water were destined, and they were desperate. After the two officials finished distributing their affairs, they retired to the hall to have tea. Jia Ti Xingyin said, "Yesterday, I received a letter from Chui Zhangshu, my relative in the middle of the capital, saying that the inspection book from the Yamen school has gone up. It has not come down yet. After meeting with the chief today, we should send someone to Lin Kangfeng, our colleague in Huiking Mansion, to inquire about the news. Go. His place is close to Beijing." Simon King said, "Sir, what you see is very clear." Immediately he called the messenger up and said, "I have 5 coins to deal with you. I will take 2 of my greeting cards and go to Huiking Mansion to see Lin Qianhu's father, ask about the instructions for the inspection in Beijing and see the experience. The note has not come yet. Be sure to inquire the truth and report back." The man received the money and the invitation, then went to the storekeeper's room to finish his packing, asked for a horse, and went on a long journey. The 2 officials then got up and went home, but he said that Xiao Zhang was waiting for him to be beaten out of the punishment court. And everyone was thinking about it while walking on the road. Unexpectedly, they didn't expect to suffer the loss today, and they complained to each other. Xiao Zhang asked Xianli, "Could it be that the news is from Tokyo?" Bai Huizi said, "No. If the news is from there, how can we be willing to let Su go? As the saying goes, a good boy can't be better than a singer. A thief can't be more than a silversmith, and he can't be more than a brawler." Naiyu said in one breath, "You don't know everything, but I can guess it. This must be because Simon Guanfu and Sangwaner got angry and asked him to show off, so they took advantage of me. It's exactly dragon fighting tiger, it hurts the little deer." Xiao Zhangshan said, "Everyone is down. It's just that I'm the one suffering the most." Sun Zizui and Zhu Mazi followed, and they only put me on the top of the vat. Yu Quan said, "Why are you talking nonsense? They are his friends. If they kneel on the ground and he sits on top, how can they get along with each other?" Xiao Zhang said leisurely, "Why don't you take your wife?" Naiyu said, "Both wives are his sweethearts. Sister Li Jiagui is his cousin. He is willing to take it. Don't be weird. It's my bad luck that I got caught in this net. What's wrong with Dad Cakesia?" He is speechless, but he is talking. This is a sign of love. Now go to Sister Li Gui's house to find Wang Sangwan. Is it a waste to give him a sore on his ass? Just ask him how many taels of silver he wants to pay, and I don't take my wife's jokes at home. So I walked into the hook fence and saw that the iron barrel at the door of Sister Li Gui's house was similar. After calling for a long time, the girl asked who it was through the door. Xiao Zhang said casually, "It's me. I'm looking for Sangwaner to talk to." The girl replied, "He has gone home since midnight that day and is not here. No one is at home and he dare not open the door." All of them had no choice but to come back to Wang Zhaoxuan's mansion and sit down in his guest seat. When Wang Sangwan heard that everyone was looking for him, he was so frightened that he hid in the room and did not dare to come out. Half a day later, the servant Yang Dinger was sent to say, "My father is not at home anymore." Everyone said, "You are so at ease. You are not at home anymore. Where did you go?" "I can't tell you to come," Yu Quan said. "I'll tell you the truth. Don't talk about it in my sleep. I just mentioned that the punishment court beat me every time," escort the general out. Now we want him to appear before the official. He hugged his legs and looked at Yongding, then asked him to go inside and said, I'm going to beat you every time, what's the big deal? Everyone was lying on the stool, screaming in pain. Wang Sangwaner became more and more afraid to come out and just shouted, Mom, how are you? You can save me in any way. Mrs. Lin said, How can I find favors to save my wife? After begging for a long time, she saw that everyone outside was waiting impatiently and wanted to ask the old lady to speak. Mrs. Lin did not go out, but said through the screen, Every time you wait for him, he is in the village and not at home anymore. I have a servant here to ask him to go. Xiao Zhangshan said, Old lady, please help him come quickly. This boil will eventually pass, and it's not a big deal just to keep it. I've been beaten for this because of him. Just now, my father ordered me to be escorted out to get him. If he doesn't come out, everyone will not be able to be clean, and it will be bad. After hearing this, Mrs. Lin quickly asked the servant to bring out tea and share it with everyone. Wang Sangwan was like a ghost, forcing his mother to look for favors. It wasn't until the critical moment that Mrs. Lin said, Sister Wen only knows the official family of Ximen, and she used to be a matchmaker with his daughter in the past. And she is very familiar with his house. Wang Sangwan said, Just admit Ximen and ask for punishment. Hurry up and ask the boy to invite him. Mrs. Lin said, Since you talked about him last time, Xing'er has not come around. How can we invite him again? He also refuses to come. Wang Sangwan said, My good mother, the matter is urgent now. Please invite him to come and wait for me to accompany him. Mrs. Lin then asked Yang Dinger to quietly open the back door and invite Mrs. Wen to come. Wang Sangwan asked him again and again, and just shouted, Mother Wen, you are serious about punishing Ximen Dogwen. At least please save me as a favor. This Mrs. Wen deliberately made a lot of flirtations and said, Although I used to have matchmaking with the eldest girl in his house in the past, who comes to his door in recent years, I live in a big house and don't bother him. Wang Sangwan quickly knelt down and said, Mother Wen, you saved me. I will repay your kindness and don't dare to forget it. Those people in front just want to serve as officials. How can I get there? Sister-in-law Wen only looked at his mother, who said, That's fine. You can just talk for him. Sister-in-law Wen said, I can't go alone. Third uncle, please keep your clothes on. When I take you to Father Ximen's house in person, you can pay your respects to him and wait until I'm around to talk. Just take care of the matter for a day. Wang Sangwan said, Seeing that everyone is pressing forward now, he is very anxious. I am afraid that he will see him for a moment. What's wrong? Wen Sao said. Is there anything difficult to do? When I go out to appease him, I will arrange some wine, meat, snacks and tea to coax him. While you're eating, I'll quietly take you out through the back door. And when the clerk comes back, he won't even know. Sister-in-law Wen walked out of the front hall, bowed to everyone twice, and said, Madam, let me come out and tell you all. I am waiting for my third uncle to go up to the village and is not at home. I have sent someone to invite me. Come here. You sit here for a while. You are beaten and scolded, which has affected everyone who doesn't eat salt and rice. Wait for the third uncle to come and teach him how to meet you. You are so different from each other, and you will always belong to everyone. As long as you figure things out, you can't help yourself when your superiors send you orders. Once the third uncle comes out, all the big things will be solved for the day. After hearing this, everyone said together, When Ma has seen a lot of people, you have come out early to say something meaningful, and I am not in a hurry. The executioner will not go home, so I will do it myself. What have you done? You are so annoying that every time I take the official stick, the boss asks you to pretend that you are not at home. You eat wine and meat. Can you ask others to do it for you? Mom, when you know the truth, when you come out, I still show you. Let's find a way with you. Break some things, find a way to talk about it, and let everyone settle the matter. If you don't come out to see me, this matter will be settled. If you are arrested and interrogated by the punishment yamen, it will be fine and you won't answer. Sister-in-law Wen said, That's what I said. Every time you sit down for a while, I will tell my wife to arrange some food and wine to take care of you. You will be hungry for half a day every time you come. Everyone said, it's my mother Wen who knows how hard people are. To be honest, Mother Wen said that every time I came out of the Yemen, I never tasted the yellow soup. This sister Wen walked to the back, rushed round, and beat the soup. He bought 2 coins of wine and 1 coin of snacks. He cut several large plates of pigs, sheep and beef into pieces, took them out, and coaxed everyone in front to eat wine and meat. This Wang Sangguan, wearing a Xingyi turban, wrote an unveiling notice, and sister-in-law Wen led him, put on a gauze, quietly walked out of the back door, and walked to Ximon King's house. When they arrived at the front door, Ping Anna recognized Aunt Wen and said, Dad was just in the hall. Let's go in. What does Aunt Wen have to say? Aunt Wen handed him a greeting card and said, Brother, if you are tired, go and report it for him. He quickly asked Wang Sangguan for 2 coins and handed it to him. Then Ping Anna went in to report Ximon King for him. Ximon King saw the handwritten greeting note, which read, Wang Kaidu, who was born late, paid his first 100 bows. On the one hand, he called Mrs. Wen first and asked for her answer. Then he opened the wooden door of the hall and asked the servant to invite Wang Sangguan in. Ximon King, wearing a Zhongjing scarf on his head, came out to greet Wang San in plain clothes. When he saw Wang San coming in, he deliberately said, Why didn't sister-in-law Wen tell me earlier? My dirty clothes are here. Then he ordered the people around him, Bring me my clothes. The panicked Wang Sangguan stepped forward and stopped him and said, I respect you, my nephew. If you dare to come and worship me, how dare you do anything? When they arrived at the hall, Wang Sangguan asked Ximon King to come up and salute. Ximon King smiled and said, This is Shixia, repeatedly refused. Ximon Qingju bowed down first, and Wang Sangguan said, My nephew is guilty of sin. I have admired him for a long time, and I owe him no thanks. Ximon King said, Be less polite to each other. Wang Sangguan invited Ximon King to receive the ceremony and said, My nephew, I should receive the ceremony to forgive the sin of being late. He stood up and received 2 gifts. Ximon King gave up his seat, and Wang Sangguan gave up again, then moved his seat to sit at an angle. After a while, after having tea, Wang Sangguan said to Ximon King, My nephew has something to do and I don't dare to disrespect his dignity. Because he took out the sticker from his sleeve and handed it over, he immediately left his seat and knelt down. Ximon King took hold of him by the hand and said, Xianxi has something to say, but what's the harm in saying it? Wang Sangguan said, My nephew is not talented. I sincerely offend him. I hope I will remember my late father Wu Bian, a minister of the first hall, forgive my nephew for his sin of ignorance, fulfill his shame, and avoid being ordered to leave office, so that my nephew will be lucky enough to be reborn on his deathbed. Connect the picture with the report. Panic, panic. Ximon King unfolded the post and unveiled it. On it were Xiao Zhongxian and 5 others. He asked the man's name and said, This bachelor has been punished in my Yemen today, and I have forgiven him. Why do I ask you to go again? Wang Sangguan said. He said that the old man's Yemen punished him and escorted him out. I want my nephew to see the official. At home, he insults and shouts in every possible way, extorts money, cannot live in peace, and has nowhere to complain. So I came here to plead guilty. He handed over the gift card again. When Ximon King saw it, he said, That's unreasonable. This bachelor's behavior is abominable. I'll spare him. But why bother him? He returned the gift card to Wang Sangguan and took it away, saying, Xianxi, please take it back. I won't. I'll leave you to sit down. Now I'll send someone to pick up this bachelor. I'll wait for a while. Wang Sangguan said, How dare you? I won't give up on my old man, so my little nephew should thank you. Thank you very much for going out. Ximon King sent it to the head of the second door and said, It's not easy for me to give you underwear. When Wang Sangguan came out, he put on his gauze, and the servant followed him. Sister-in-law Wen also discussed Ximon King's words. Ximon King ordered, Don't disturb him. I'll send someone here to take it. Mrs. Wen and Wang Sangguan arrived home secretly. Unexpectedly, Ximon King immediately sent a section level and for platoon troops to Wang Zhaoxuan's house. The man was drinking and making noise there. but the gentleman came in and took away all the bracelets without any explanation. Everyone's faces turned pale and they said, "The good thing Wang Sangwan did was to keep me at home, but it turned out to be a hoe for me." The section-level platoon soldier scolded, "You guys are still talking nonsense. What do you think you are? Everyone go to my father and plead. It is serious to ask for your life." Xiao Zhang said leisurely, "That's what the uncle taught me." After a while, they all got to the front door of Simon King's house. There were troops lined up at the door and Ping and Er all opened their hands and asked for money before giving it to him. Everyone couldn't help but take off their trousers and tie hairpins round their heads. They were ready to go before they started speaking. Half a day later, Simon King came out to sit in the hall and was brought in by Gigi to kneel under the hall. Simon King scolded, "I treated you like a bachelor, but I will kill you. How do you accuse my yeoman of going to his house to blackmail you? How much money did you really swindle? If you don't tell me, you will have me take a hammer with you. Get up," he just said, and the platoon troops on the left and right immediately brought 5 or 6 new sticks to serve him. Xiao Zhang waited idly and just kowtowed and begged. Xiaobu didn't extort any money. He just wanted to call him from the yeoman and tell him something. His family brought out some food and wine to treat the kids, but Xiaobu didn't do anything. "Need to ask for his," Simon King said. "You shouldn't go to his house either. You bachelors are deceiving the children of good families and asking for money with nothing. It's very hateful. Since you refused to confess, you and I took them to the yeoman and put them in jail. They will be tried strictly tomorrow. Confession, show the shackles to the public." Everyone begged and cried, "Master Tianguan, if you give birth to a child, you will never dare to come to their door to harass him again. Stop talking about the shackles and send them to prison now. Winter is cold. Hours and months. Every little one is a dead number." Simon King said, "I will spare you from being a bachelor. You must change your mind and improve your physical health. You are not allowed to live in the neighborhood, seduce other people's children, or defraud property. If you come to my yeoman again, you will be alive, beaten to death," he ordered. "Fork out." Everyone got their lives and ran out. Exactly, smash the jade cage and fly the colorful phoenix. Suddenly open the golden lock and drive away the dragon. Simon King sent everyone away and returned to the back room. Yunyang asked, "Is this the third official of Wang Zhao?" Simon King said, "This is the third son of Wang Zhaoshuan. He was the one Li Gaier was responsible for the incident the day before yesterday. Today's thief, the little slut, didn't change her ways, so she kept pestering him again, giving him 30 taels of silver a month to cover her. She always only coaxed me. I didn't want someone to accuse me and tell me to teach me how to be a clerk. After catching this guy, he was beaten up in the yeoman. Unexpectedly, this guy came to his house again and complained, hoping to defraud him of a few taels of silver. He only said that the yeoman wanted him. He had never seen an official before, so he panicked. Young when my sister-in-law came to me with 50 taels of gift cards to beg me for favors. I just brought that person again, tied his hair, and put an end to it for him. It was unlucky for him to have such an unscrupulous son come out. Your family would have foundation your grandfather has. He is still making recruitment announcements, and you have entered the martial arts school. You don't want to do it, and you have a daughter-in-law who is like a flower branch at home. You don't want to talk about it. You just follow this group of bachelors in the courtyard day and night. This year, you are less than 20 years old and you are too young to be a master." Yunyang said, "You old crow is making fun of a pig's feet. It turns out that the lampstand does not shine on you. You think you are a master. You also drink the water from this well and do everything. What has been done to clean up? We still have to ban people." Simon King was speechless after saying a few words. Just as the meal was being served, Lion came to report, "Ying'er's father is here." Simon King said, "Please sit down in the study and I will come." Wang Jing quickly opened the door of the study room in the hall, and the count went in and sat down. After a long time, Simon King came out. After the sound was over, they sat on the king and the two of them talked. The Earl asked, "Brother, you were at Brother Z's house the day before yesterday. Why did you get up so early?" Simon King said, I have been engaged in business for the past few days, and I am inspecting nearby. I sent people to Tokyo to inquire about the news. Am I more idle than you? The Earl asked again. Brother, has there been anything in the Yemen in the past few days? Simon King said. Nothing. That day. The Earl said again. Wang Sangwaner said that there are 5 Xiaozhongxians in the Yemen. On the evening of the 8th, everything was taken from Sister Li Gui's house, except for Lao Sun and Zhu Mazi. This morning, they were taken to the Yemen and all were beaten. Everyone went to Zhaoshuan Mansion to harass Wang and Sangwan. Why are you hiding it from me? Simon King said. You idiot. Who told you? How dare you mishear it? How dare you not be in my Yemen, but Zhou Shofu's mansion? The Earl said. Who in the garrison mansion is meddling in this business? Simon King said. Is it possible that someone from the capital was promoted? The Earl said. No, Li Ming told me this morning that he scared his whole family to death that day. No more. Li Geyer has fallen asleep so far that she hasn't gotten up from the bed yet. She was afraid that someone from Tokyo would come down to pick someone up again. So when I asked around this morning, I found out that she was taken to the criminal court to pick someone up. Simon King said, I haven't entered the Yemen for several days, so I didn't know. Li Geyer has vowed not to pick him up and let him do what he wants. But why is he afraid of falling asleep? Seeing Simon King's face ready to laugh, the Earl said, Brother, you are a human being, and even I kept it a secret. Today he sued me, and I knew about brother. Why did Zhu Mazi and Lao Sun leave? There was an arresting Yemen, and there was an escapee. This is my brother fighting the sheep cult Malu, which makes Li Geyer's family afraid, knowing what my brother's methods are. If they all go to the Yemen, they will lose their affection for each other, and it will be boring. One thing is allowed, but 2 are not allowed. Now it is Lao Sun. Zhu Mazi felt a little ashamed when he saw his brother. This was his plan to build the plank road openly and secretly cheat Chen Kang. Don't blame me for saying that he did a great job. This is called a real person who doesn't show his face. And a person who shows his face is not a real person. If Ming succeeds, he is no longer a good person. He is still very resourceful and has seen a lot. After saying a few words, Simon King burst into laughter and said, What great ingenuity do I have? The Earl said, I guess there must be someone from the bottom of my family who is telling me. How do you know all this? There are ghosts and gods in the end, an unexpected opportunity. Simon King said, You are a fool. If you want others to not know, you have to do nothing yourself. The Earl said, There is no need for Wang Sangwan in my Yemen now. Simon King said, Who wants him to do anything? When the officer was branded, I wiped out the names of Wang Sangwan, Zhu Mazi, Lao Sun, Li Geyer, and Qin Yuzi, and only used a few bachelors to beat him. The Earl asked, Why is he still pestering him now? Simon King said, Let me tell you the truth. He hopes to blackmail him for a few taels of silver. I didn't expect Wang Sangwan to come to visit me just now, kowtow to me, and accompany me. Isn't it? I sent people to take those bachelors again and asked for their shackles. They all begged them again and said that they would not dare to come to harass them again. Wang Sangwan claimed that I was an old man and took 50 taels of gift cards. I don't accept it from him. He will ask my family to thank me tomorrow. The Earl was surprised and said, Is he really here to accompany his brother? Simon King said, Why don't I coax you? The King's Sutra took out a greeting card from the house, which read, Wang Kai, who was born late, bowed 100 times. When the Count saw it, he praised him very much. Brother's calculation is wonderful and unpredictable. Simon King told the Count, If you see him, just say I don't know. The Earl said, I know. The secret is not leaked. How can I tell him? After sitting for a while and eating tea, the Earl said, Brother, I'll go. I'm afraid that Lao Sun and Zhu Mazi will get involved in the future. Just say I'm not here yet. Simon Qingdo. He came, and I did not see him. At the same time, he called the generals to come and gave instructions, but the 2 of them only promised not to be at home. From then on, Simon King no longer visited Sister Li Gui's house, nor did he ask Li Ming to sing when there was wine in the house. so he became distant. Exactly, it rained on Huanhua Creek last night. And who were the green poplars and fragrant grass?
Alright, this part of the story ends here.
Want to know what happened next? Let's listen to the breakdown next time.